are you? Today I want to talk to you about how emotional eating suppresses your thyroid function and the significant negative impact that emotional and binge eating behaviors have specifically on our thyroid health. So I'm going to talk to you about the top 5 ways that emotional and binge eating inhibit thyroid function, and I'm going to break down why this behavior can have such a significant impact on such an important gland and such an important part of our hormone system. And then of course, then how this feeds more of the emotional eating, binge eating cycles. Stay tuned for that right away. Right before we dive into that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the subscription button below. Make sure you have the notification bell on. Like this video if you're enjoying it and you're learning something. Lets me know what kind of content to keep creating for you guys. I'm extremely passionate about educating about emotional eating, binge eating, hormone health, gut health, self-empowerment, because these behaviors really have a significant negative impact on our physical, mental, energetic health. And I want to help you break down the connections and all of the complexities to help you gain food and body freedom. I am Romaniuk. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to all the new subscribers and to those of you who've been watching for a while. I have helped thousands of women and men all over the world overcome binge and emotional eating, identify the roots of their hormone and gut issues, and gain food and body freedom to help you step into a life and a body and a state of health that you've always dreamed of having. So make sure that you are subscribed, like I said, so that you don't miss a video and you don't miss any of my shorts that are going to help to educate you and empower you. A couple things I want to mention quickly. Number one, if you're wondering if you have a thyroid issue or you know you have a thyroid issue and you're also struggling with emotional eating, whether or not you are, you won't want to miss the thyroid health workshop happening May 29th. The link is in the description below to come and sign up. There's only a few spots left, but essentially what I'm going to be doing is educating you on what the thyroid is, what the functions are, what the common imbalances are, how to properly read your testing, what the sweet spots of normal really are, and what to do if you already are struggling with a thyroid imbalance, and how do we start to regulate it, including dealing with emotional eating behaviors. If you're struggling with emotional eating and you want to connect for a 30-minute complimentary body freedom consultation to talk about getting help to overcome binge eating and emotional eating, as well to identify the roots of your hormone issues and more, the link is in the description below to book that 30-minute complimentary consultation. So let's dive in. So the first way that emotional and binge eating inhibit thyroid function is that these behaviors fuel and amplify inflammation. And so inflammation will show up in the body in the forms of redness, swelling, heat, or pain. So if you get eczema, rosacea, skin breakouts, you have pain, you feel warm and puffy, you're retaining a lot of water, you feel swollen. These are all signs of inflammation. And what happens is the more inflamed the body, the more suppressed thyroid function and the more stress the thyroid itself gets. And then it struggles to produce enough T3 and T4, which are the main thyroid hormones, to not only help your thyroid function properly, but to help you feel optimal. And often what will happen with heightened inflammation is we will see far too low of T3 and T4, and then we can end up in more of a hypothyroid state, which is where the thyroid is underactive, the metabolism gets sluggish. I talked about this in previous thyroid health videos. They'll be linked below so you can check out the series. But inflammation is one of the worst things for your thyroid health because it suppresses and almost slows down the way the thyroid can function. And again, we lack the ability to produce enough T3 and T4, and then you end up with hair loss, eyebrow thinning, cold hands and feet, lack of hunger signal and appetite, anxiety, depression, constipation, unexplained, unexpected weight gain, and it feels next to impossible to lose weight. There's all kinds of symptoms that can come along with this. And then if you already say have a hypothyroid issue and or you already have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the inflammatory autoimmune condition where the thyroid is attacking itself and you produce too many antibodies, this emotional and binge eating behavior can skyrocket those antibodies, which we want to try and get them as low as possible. And help reduce this inflammation is extremely important. But this behavior, this emotional and binge eating, is essentially amplifying more of what we don't want and is negatively impacting the way the thyroid can function or negatively impacting any current condition you have with your thyroid. The second way that emotional and binge eating behaviors are negatively impacting your thyroid health is that when you're emotionally eating, you're binge eating, oftentimes we are in a state of overwhelm, we're in a state of stress, we're stressed about giving into food again, we're stressed about gaining weight, we're stressed about the next diet that you're going to try and go on, which I honestly don't recommend because it's not going to fix emotional eating. But it's like this yo-yo dieting, restriction, fear of losing control with food, binge or emotional eating, and then feeling like you have to get back on track, with your diet, your eating style. And so what ends up happening is the more stress in the body, the more our cortisol can be impacted. And this is the stress hormone. I have the whole adrenal fatigue series. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's linked below. But the more cortisol we produce, the more of a stress, fight or flight response the body is in, the more overstimulated our pituitary gland gets, which is kind of in the third eye area. And the more overstimulated it gets, the more TSH we produce, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone. And this is also a hormone that is tied to hormone function. However, if you're producing too much TSH, this is also going to put you into that hypothyroid state that I was just talking about. It's going to contribute to those symptoms, slow the metabolism down, make it easier for you to gain weight, the hair loss, the eyebrow thinning, all the things that I was just sharing about. We don't want to see a TSH get really high, and we don't want to see T3 and T4 get too low. But a cortisol imbalance, because of all the stress around emotional eating, binge eating, chasing the number on the scale, the emotional roller coaster that is weight gain, weight loss, losing control with food, trying to gain willpower, which it's not about willpower or trying harder. It's actually about addressing the roots of binge and emotional eating. And like I said earlier, you can click the link in the description to book a 30-minute complimentary body freedom consultation so that we can talk about helping you overcome this behavior. I've helped thousands do so, and I healed it myself. So I totally get what you're going through. And I will continue to make videos on binge and emotional eating to help you with that as well. So pituitary gets too stimulated because cortisol's high, because you're in a stress response, you produce too much TSH, slows the metabolism down, negatively impacts the thyroid. So the third way that emotional and binge eating negatively impact the thyroid is that, of course, the more we're eating, the more processed the foods are that we eat. Or even if it's not, maybe it's healthy foods you're binging on. I went through a phase where I was binge eating like bags of nuts and nut butter and 10 bananas and a whole container of brown rice pasta. It was quote unquote healthier food, but the volume was not healthy. And so emotional and binge eating have a very negative impact on our digestive health. And obviously, the more out of whack our digestive system, the more inflammation we're going to have, which I was just talking about, right? How high inflammation really negatively impacts thyroid. And then we don't produce enough T3 and T4. It can also contribute to Hashimoto's, thyroiditis. But the other things we want to look at is the more we binge and emotionally eat, the lower our stomach acid, the more inflamed the intestinal linings, the harder it is for us to break down and absorb our food properly. And if we can't properly absorb our selenium, our iodine, our minerals, the precious vitamins and nutrients that are going to help our thyroid function optimally, then we're going to end up with more selenium and iodine deficiencies. And the more deficient we are in those two key nutrients, the more inhibited our thyroid function can become. And the other part of this as well is that if we're eating a lot of processed sugars, lots of processed carbohydrates, drinking a lot of alcohol, we've had to take a lot of antibiotics. This throws our unhealthy gut flora off in the large intestine, and we end up with a lot of unhealthy flora, a lot of unhealthy bacteria, fungus, yeasts. We've been exposed to mold. All of this skyrockets inflammation, overstimulates the body, boosts that cortisol up, and then we end up in this picture where you're overproducing TSH or you're usually not producing enough T3 and T4, and then you end up in this state of hypothyroid, or some people end up with the autoimmune condition Hashimoto's, and this all inhibits thyroid function. So as I mentioned earlier, when we're in emotional and binge eating behavior and we're suppressing and inhibiting our thyroid function, it makes it a lot easier for us to gain weight unexpectedly. And we can't figure out why the heck am I gaining weight and why can't I lose it? And so the fourth block here is that the more we self-sabotage with food, the more stressed we are, the more we put ourselves on the back burner and don't take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, or energetically. Guess what happens? The more stressed the thyroid gets, the more weight you gain, the more you panic, the more hard you get on yourself. That fuels the whole stress response. And then, of course, for a lot of us, we've been conditioned to go and diet, to quick fix, to cut calories, to restrict. And unfortunately, none of that is going to help you heal your relationship with food and overcome binge and emotional eating. It usually only fuels more binge and emotional eating because you feel restricted. And then one day you have a bunch of triggers come up and you don't know how to deal with them. And you're just like, screw it. I don't care. I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm in a bad mood. I'm tired. It doesn't matter. Or you rebel because you were restricting and now you're going to go and eat all the things you weren't allowing yourself to have, which just keeps fueling that cycle. And then the weight keeps going up and up and up. And even if you diet and lose a bit, as soon as you go back to the binge and emotional eating, you gain it back. Or maybe you get on the diet, but you can't lose weight because your thyroid is off and is inhibiting you from being able to release the weight. So this whole yo-yo diet restriction is not good for optimal thyroid function, because if you're skipping breakfast, you're fasting, you're not eating enough, this slows the metabolism down, is going to stress out your adrenals, your cortisol, your thyroid even more. And then one day your blood sugar spikes and drops and surges and your appetite level significantly goes through the roof. And then you overeat, you binge. It's just easier to lose control with food. And then you get frustrated and you're beating yourself up. And this is just this whole stress, negative emotional state that we're in. And all of this stress about negative self-talk, being critical about the number on the scale, being critical about your body, it stresses your body, it spikes your cortisol, and that's gonna overstimulate the pituitary that I was just talking about. We produce too much TSH. The overconsumption of the food stresses the body out, and then the restriction stresses the body out. So it's like this whole behavior of restrictions, yo-yo dieting, and then binge and emotional eating is one of the worst combinations for all your hormone function and overall health and well-being, but especially impacts the thyroid. I would say about 75 to 80% of my clients who are struggling with emotional eating have a thyroid imbalance, whether we discover it while we're working together or they already knew about it. However, we can improve it, but we have to address these root issues like emotional and binge eating, chasing the number on the scale, your lack of self-worth, because this lack of self-worth and unworthiness is fueling these behaviors and keeping your body stuck in this place that is not as optimal as it could be. And the fifth way that emotional and binge eating are suppressing or inhibiting your thyroid function is that when we're binge and emotionally eating, we're suppressing and shoving all of our emotions down. We're often afraid to feel, and or we feel like we don't have time to feel or process our emotions, and or we don't want to feel, so we distract with food, we shove it down, we numb it down. But the more emotion we have suppressed in the body, the more stressed the nervous system gets. And the more stressed your nervous system gets, the more of a fight or flight stress response you're in, the more cortisol you produce, and the more that negatively impacts the thyroid. Not to mention that the thyroid is in the throat, and we have 7 energy centers. This is the throat chakra right here, okay? And so if you're the people pleaser who is constantly, listening to other people's opinions, but you're too afraid to express yourself or speak your truth or share your needs or ask for what you need or stand up for yourself, and you choke your words back and you hold your words back, which there's a tie to emotional eating with this. When we don't feel good enough, we don't feel worthy, we feel insecure, we'll often act or behave a certain way to please others and make sure they're happy for fear of them abandoning us or being upset with us if we, were to say something like speaking our truth or expressing ourselves or saying no. So when we choke and hold all that in, we suppress the function of our thyroid and we suppress that throat chakra. And then overall, we're suppressing all this emotion when we're binge and emotional eating, which stresses out the adrenals and the nervous system, which is going to stress out your thyroid. So we do really want to, learn how to, build self-worth. We want to claim our power and take it back. We want to feel worthy and good enough. And so there's some deeper inner healing to do here that I do with my clients on a regular basis at a mindful pace that is going to help you feel worthy. It's going to help you learn to love yourself and fill this void that you're trying to fill with food that you're never going to. And as you heal your relationship with food in your body and you learn to speak your truth and stand up for yourself and feel so much more confident and in your power and in this deep belief of yourself and how amazing you are, guess what? The thyroid function starts to improve, because the less we binge and emotionally eat, the less inflammation in the body, the better the gut health, the better your cortisol health in your nervous system. Guess what? We produce more T3 and T4. The pituitary destimulates and we don't produce as much TSH. There's so much connection between all of this. So I'm curious to hear, what is a takeaway from you? What are you learning today that you didn't already know? And what is something you want to take action on to help you address your thyroid function issues and or emotional or binge eating behaviors? And like I said earlier, if you are struggling with binge or emotional eating and or a thyroid issue or both, and you want to connect to talk more about overcoming self-sabotage with food, getting to the roots of your thyroid issues, getting on the proper supports so you can gain relief from your symptoms and feel like yourself again, the links are below to book a 30-minute body freedom consultation, which is free, as well as the thyroid workshop, which has a small fee, but it's going to be very eye-opening and empowering, and we only have a few spots left. Like I said earlier, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, share any comments or questions you have below. What is the takeaway? And I hope you enjoyed today's video. We'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care. Sending you lots of love.